Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Scoop World Order. Appreciate you guys being on here. It's the next generational quarterback about to commit to Ohio State. We're going to break down the Phenom who loves Ohio State. And guess what, folks? He's a South Florida Express kid. We've talked about him before. And the pipeline is flowing from South Florida. And there's a ton of kids coming up this weekend. We're going to get into that big official visit weekend coming. The number one tackle in the nation is going to be here, Felix Ojo. Camp season is coming. Time for these coaches to get to work and keep stocking the cupboard with five-star talent, which is what we're about to be doing. So as always, if you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, thank you for all of you that have subscribed to Apple Podcasts and left us five-star reviews. It's right on your iPhone. It's right on your iPad. Type into the podcast app, Buckeye Scoop, click subscribe. Super simple and easy to do. Very, very easy, very, very fun. And it's an easy way to help us out. Also, again, the YouTube is growing. We're trying to hit 40,000 pretty aggressively. And we appreciate all of you guys that have been spreading the good word. Text the show to your friends, post it on your Facebook group. A lot of easy ways to help out, completely free. And we appreciate you guys joining us each and every night. I'm going to get right to this with Nevada. Neiman Lawrence is a kid who is a prodigy. It's already played 2 years of varsity football, played varsity as an eighth grader and a ninth grader, and now he's a sophomore, just transferred to Northwestern High School in Miami, was head coach of Teddy Bridgewater. South Florida Express kid, which we love. But this kid is a true phenom, number one player in his class. Tell us a little bit about Neiman Lawrence.
Well, I mean, well, let me just talk about quarter.
He's a difference maker. So exciting times, because again, is it sometimes difficult to get geared up for a kid who's got 3 if not 2 years left of high school left if you were to reclassify. It can be, but when you get one of these kids in the fold and he's the best player in the country in his class and he wants to be the leader of the class, then that momentum is going to start real quick. And he's got a lot of guys around him that are at SFE. Eric McFarland is at IMG. He's a kid that Ohio State is a very heavy favorite for. And Eric McFarland is Tyreek Hill. That's what he is. He plays for IMG Academy. He is a guy that is going to be likely a kid that could reclassify. Again, because the reclassification thing is different now, because these kids if they come to college year earlier, then they get their NIL deal a year earlier, and they don't have to risk injury their senior year of high school. So that's a real thing. But Eric McFarland could play at Ohio State this year. He's that good. He's a smaller guy. There are coaches at Ohio State that don't think we've ever had a guy like this guy. Talk about Eric McFarland, just because he's like I said, we've had JJ, who's a monster, and we've had Marvin. But in terms of body type, speed, have we ever had like a true Tyreek Hill level, Olympic level sprinter type guy? I don't. And we had Ted, but Ted was a long, lean, not super tall, but long, lean, not built and compact like Tyreek Hill. And again, both blazing fast, through the fastest players in the history of football. But Eric's a different cat, and this is a kid that if we get him and we get this kid, Neiman Lawrence, it's going to be curtains for a long time. And this is kind of the kickoff to recruiting, because recruiting is about to start up, and I'll switch gears. But Nevada, we've talked a lot about team updates and obviously a lot of Michigan stuff, but official visit season is now getting to be here, and this is something that these summer officials, the weather hopefully will hold up and be nice in Columbus. But we have a star-studded roster coming to town this weekend. Talk a little bit about like the benefits to Ohio State getting this stuff done in the very end of May, if not early June, and through the month of June, as you see a lot of these kids starting to commit earlier and get their decisions out of the way before their senior years.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, I mean, May 30th sets off a 3 or 4 week stretch where we've just got kind of a who's who of kids coming in. You mentioned Felix Ojo, the number one running back, and the kind of that Savion Hyder, Caden Dixon White will be in. Obviously, he's committed. Luke Waffle, a kid we've talked about here, defensive end out of New Jersey. Xavier Griffin, Donovan Webb, Jake Truel. I mean, it's just it's for Ohio State. right now, Ohio State's in a position where their biggest challenge is trying to get their commitments firmed up so they get their NIL money kind of allocated because while we're not in a salary cap era per se, Ohio State definitely has a salary cap. They have a certain amount of money that's coming from the school. They've got a certain amount of money that's coming from their donors and from their NIL collective, and they know what they have to spend, and that's what Mark Antoni is kind of deploying right now. So we've talked about how they're asking kids to commit early, to make a commitment, to lock down the commitment, to agree not to take other official visits, and you know, it's all in an effort to be able to allocate responsibly their NIL money. And recently there was a, a video of a kid committing to Oregon, and big game Dan Lanning jumped in the pool with it. Remember, I don't know if you remember. Did you see that one, Kirk, where the kid he jumped in the
Was
pool?
it was terrible. That was
Well,
terrible.
that kid is taking other official visits.
Of course he is.
Oh, yeah, of course he is. So yeah, and
Uh,
including a visit to Ohio State. So it's like you know, Ohio State's just, they're trying to hit this thing, out of the park early with these kids, trying to lock them down, get them committed, using the old strategy of getting them around other committed kids and really, got it. But right now, Ohio State's got so much momentum on the recruiting trail right now. And it's really silly because, for years, we had Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer was a true rock star in the college football world. When he went somewhere, that was like a really big deal. Well, Ryan Day, he's not Urban Meyer yet. He's not. It's not the same excitement that when Nick Saban shows up or Urban Meyer would show up or whatever it is. But Ryan, Ryan Day coming off a national championship. Obviously the quarterback whisperer, kind of the fair-haired child of college football coaches right now, and clearly a guy that's right up there with Kirby Smart for the best coach in all of college football. It's a big deal when Ryan Day reaches out. It's a big deal when Ryan Day is recruiting you. It's a big deal when Ryan Day offers you. So they're hitting it right off. They're kicking this off on May 30th with a huge recruiting weekend. Um, with I think it's like 5 or 6 different 5-star kids coming in. So I love it. I love the way that Ohio State's being aggressive as they are, but they've got a staff that can recruit. It used to be where we'd have a staff and it'd be like, wow, and you've got a staff and you've got that one guy that's the great recruiter or the one side of the ball or whatever it might be. But now it's like you've got great recruiters up and down the staff. You've got a head coach who's a rock star. You've got a defensive coordinator who's got Super Bowl rings to wave at people. I mean, it's really a complete staff, an energetic staff, a staff that's recruiting at the highest level across the country in places that we've never recruited before. In Mississippi, in Louisiana, killing the state of Georgia. I mean, it's really we're kind of going anywhere that we want to go, and we're really putting ourselves in a good position. But if it all starts, I think this first weekend's kind of a one where you really want to get out of the gate strong, get some foundational pieces in, and I think Ohio State's doing that. So I'm really excited to see what comes from the May 30th recruiting weekend.
yeah, I think that you look at this first weekend. There's a lot of huge targets on there. They're going to be expensive, and I agree with Ryan Day and Mark Patini. The philosophy of these kids not taking visits after they commit. I think it's smart, man, because you have to plan your budget, your roster. If kids are sniffing around, then it's like, well, are we holding this for this guy or should we go after this guy? Because it's all maneuvering the salary cap, which again is amazing because again we're getting kids that frankly were much more difficult to get than they are now. Because frankly, when the SEC was paying kids to play a ton, and then we were losing on a lot of those kids, and now we're taking them at will, which is great. Sincere Johnson is also going to commit. He announced he's committing on the 19th, which is 3 days after Ohio State's visit. The linebacker from Glenville is a kid that I'd be shocked if he's not in this class. And we've got this could be potentially if we land a Tyler Atkinson, Xavier Griffin. I mean, we've got two 5-star guys that are on the hook that are both, they both like Ohio State. They're both really high on Ohio State. But Tyler Atkinson, we're the favorites right now for him. So if we come to terms, it's going to be a good year for Mr. Laurinaitis. I'm really proud of that. Nevada camp season is also about to kick off, and camps are, I think, much different than they used to be. Obviously, I can go back, over the last 20 years, how they've kind of morphed from being, it's really weird to think about what camps used to be because 20 years ago, like when I went to camp, there were it was like a 2-night overnight 3-day camp, and we like practiced. It was interesting. I listened to PJ Fleck get interviewed by Jim Tressel on Tress's podcast, which is a great podcast. And he talked about how he went to Northern Illinois camp, and it was like 2 days. I mean, it was like literally like a practice in the morning, practice at night. You'd stay in the dorm rooms, you'd eat in the mess halls. And that's what camp used to be. Like, I mean, when I went to Penn State for camp, it was like 4 nights. It was like 4 nights in a dorm and practice twice a day. And, and it was hard. Like, I mean, I'm not saying it wasn't fun, but I mean, it was like it had 2 days, like football practices. And then the next year I went to Ohio State, and then my senior year I went to Michigan and Ohio State. And it was just, it was a different type of, I guess, test, as opposed to now where the commuter camps just don't exist. Not the commuter camps, but like the overnight camps don't exist anymore. Those used to be kind of a moneymaker for the school. So they'd keep you in the dorms for 4 days and make you buy the meal plan for 4 days. And I mean, the camps are probably $400 or $500 to go to, which is a lot of money. I mean, it was expensive to go for 4 days. And now the camps are literally, they're not even a whole day. It's a half day. Like in the morning, it's like usually the big guys, the offensive line, defensive line, maybe specialists. And in the evening or the afternoon, not even the evening, the afternoon, like from noon to 3, it's literally the skill guys, like the tight ends, linebackers, DBs, receivers, quarterbacks. They do competitive stuff where they go against each other. How has camp changed? Because you've been around camps for a long time, from covering it, from getting intel at it. Now it's like, it's almost hilarious how short they are because it's a warm up, it's some drills, and then it's some competitive stuff. And a lot of times they pull the top guys out of it and they have them go do separate drills. But what are your thoughts as we get into camp season? Because it's an eval, but I feel like a lot of the evals are already done, unless you're like a Jake Cook and you're a guy that has to go and show out to earn that offer that you feel like you deserve, and which he did, which I thought was great. What are your thoughts as we get into camp season?
I mean, camps really, think of it this way. I mean, camps, in my opinion, used to be not exclusively, but primarily an evaluation tool. They were, a chance for you to go out there and show what you could do. And little Kirk Barton, went out there with his track shoes on and ran a 4.68 or whatever it was, while everybody else was goofing around in their penny loafers, and you're leaving everybody in the dust, and you end up with your Bobby Buckeye Ohio State offer, and the rest is history. But now I think camp is really more to find it kind of, it's almost like an expression of interest. It's almost like, are you interested in the schools, for the school to know, that you have a level of interest in the school. It's an opportunity for them to talk to you, because I mean, outside those windows, it's difficult for them to have communication. This way, they can have communication with you. But in the age of NIL, I really just think it's just about gauging, who wants to be a Buckeye, or who has a sincere interest, who wants an offer from Ohio State. And the way that the recruiting calendar's kind of moved up, now, while we're talking about going into camp season and everything else like that, I mean, heck, we're in the middle of official visit season, commit season, everything else. And, it never used to be like this. So, yeah, no, it's changed. I don't think that we'll ever see the overnight camps, make a return, the multi-day camps. I think a lot of things have kind of replaced that. And I think for Ohio State, they're just kind of evolving, as they're kind of moving along. But that's why these things, they tend to be so short, because whoever shows up, those are the guys those are the guys that They want to see that you've taken a time, that you've had an interest to book a flight, get in a car, whatever it might be, and show up to campus. And those unofficial visits, those trips to camp, even if it's just not to work out, but just to kind of show up and say hello, I think those have become, you know, that's kind of the opening of the bidding season in the NIL world, that is college football recruiting.
Yeah, I think camps, outside of if you're like a freshman or a sophomore, are to the point where they're just completely worthless now, because most of your stone cold guys, if they're not offered by their junior year, they're not showing up. And you might have to fill that roster out with the bottom. But I think that at Ohio State, that camps are going to go the way of the dodo sooner and sooner, because you see what Ohio State does to backfill their roster when you see them go snag a tackle from West Virginia. It was a Pickerington kid. You see them go going after some kind of lower ranked portal guys to kind of backfill their roster. Some guys have already proven that they're going to have to play in college. I just think that the talent has dropped off so precipitously at camp that they're not really super worth covering anymore. I don't think they're worth covering at all, because the best players generally don't work out anymore. Like, you're not going to see, like Caden Dixon-Wyatt could come camp at Ohio State if he wanted to, but I would be shocked if he worked out, because the other thing is now they have summer official visits. So, most of these kids, if they're going to show up, they're going to show and check out they're going to check out, the campus, and they're going to get the free, get the free meals, get the free flight. Because you can't do an official visit. And again, I don't know the exact rule on this, but it'd be interesting to know if, like, you said, hey, book my flight. You talk to the travel secretary at Ohio State, and if you're like a Caden Dixon-White, you say, hey, I'm going to fly in, but usually you have to fly in within like the 72 hours or the 48 hours of the visit beginning. And then once you're there, you're on their dime. You can't work out on an official visit. And that's an NCAA rule. So you can't like fly in, do a workout, and then take the official. Like, once you're on the official, like, you're on the official. So you lose a lot of the big seniors. And again, that's something that, when I was a senior, way back when, like, we had like the greatest camp ever was we had senior advance camp, and it was literally invite only. And it was like, it was Brady Quinn, it was Dante Whitner, it was Darius Hiley. It was like basically all the top players in Ohio came to it. And there were some national kids that came in, and it was like a brawl. I mean, it was literally all good on good, because the thing that the coaches want to do the most while they're out there is when you get to the competitive drills, you want to see good on good action. You want to see, okay, I want to see Tyquan Lewis versus, at the time we were evaluating a kid named Tim Gardner, really nice kid. And Tyquan was a monster. Tyquan's playing for the Colts now. He was, a kid that we took with Joey Bosa in the same recruiting class. But Tim was out there, and Tim was shutting him down, was locking him up, and it was stunning. And Tim was a kid that was a little heavy, and we said, hey, you gotta lose weight and whatever. And he jumped through all those hoops, and we ended up offering him. And then, he had an issue off the field and never made it to school and went to Indiana instead. But he was a kid that, when you see a kid who might be a diamond in the rough type, and all of a sudden you put him against a 4-star or 5-star. I think Tyquan was probably a high 4-star type kid. Like, that's where you can see some of these guys show out, or you can see guys turn it down. Because that's the thing, is when you show up there, man, everybody's watching you. I mean, Urban Meyer's walking over, Ryan Day's walking over, like whoever, the coordinators, the line coach, they all want to get a look at you. Mark Pantoni. And there's nowhere to hide, so we're, if you're going to have a bad day, that it's a bad place to have a bad day. And I've seen kids, and there's a kid that sticks out right at the front of my head, who going into the practice that day, they're like, if he just doesn't fall on his face, like, we're going to offer him, we want him. And the kid literally went on vacation the week before, and then he goes out there and he runs his 40 and he pulls his hamstring. And so he can't work out. And he was this close to being an Ohio State Buckeye. And, and I was like, yeah, and I found out he went on vacation the week before these camps. And I'm like, dude, like, these camps are like the Super Bowl. Like, I mean, you got to treat it like this is this is the killing fields. And again, you don't understand, like, and if you don't treat it like that, then you're gonna get bushwhacked. And it happened to this kid, and I felt terrible because he was a kid I was rooting for, and I had Mark Pantoni, Ed Warner, like the guys over there, they're saying, yeah, if he has a day, we're gonna offer him, and we'll take his commitment and everything else. And I was just like, whoa, and I didn't say that to the kid because I don't want to have him, freak out. But it's like, they really liked his film. They liked him. They liked his mentality. He was in good shape. And then like the kid literally went on vacation for a week and was eating mozzarella sticks and laying on the beach, and then blew a tire on the 40 and never got offered and never really had much of a career. So it's just one of those things, man. I tell these kids, when I was in the industry and I was working and I was talking to these kids, I'm like, look, this is it. This is your job audition. So if there's anything in the world that's more important than this, then go do that. Otherwise, show up in shape, run every day, make sure you're lifting. Because again, once when you get out there, you're going to see some real dudes. Like you're going to get out there to see some defensive end who's from Georgia, like some Tyler Atkinson type, and you got to block that guy. And a kid like Tyler Atkinson who works out 8 hours a day, like you don't want to look like an idiot in front of everybody when that kid when you get your turn against that kid. And same thing for like the receivers and the DBs, and you'll see kids that put in the work, and then you'll see the kids that the hype wasn't real. So that's the thing that's great about the camps. But like I said, they've devolved a lot of it to individual workouts, and they'll take him inside the Woody and they'll put him behind the curtain and they'll take him through individual stuff and they'll film it because they really want to evaluate the movement skills. And that's something that I've got this tape with Mateo, he's obviously he's going to be a first team preseason All-American from Oregon, Mateo Uiagalelei. But I'll toss his tape on real quick when he was working out with LJ. Like, they take him back behind this curtain, and they put him through all these different drills and workouts, and you can see like this is, and imagine like for a wide receiver or for a quarterback or for I remember I think this year Nico was there, the kid that went to UCLA from Tennessee, the kid that we just beat in the playoffs, he was there. And they go behind this curtain, and they've got the camera guys everywhere, and they want to see the movement skills. They want to see how hard can you push him in a workout. I mean, you don't want to kill the kid because you don't want to be miserable there, but you also you got to put him through the paces and see how he looks, because you're taking a big swing at some of these kids, especially if there's an NIL package involved. So this is just kind of what they do with camps. Where back in the day, there was never like an individual workout. And again, I think that this is a good thing that Mark Pantoni and Ryan Day and the staff do, and Urban started doing this, because you could literally put him through like an NFL combine workout on your own, and just see how he moves. Because I think that when you're evaluating him, like you'll watch his tape and you'll watch another defensive end, and if you got to make one an NIL offer, it's like, well, okay, which one do we like more? Who won the drills, but also who moved better, who projected better. And like I said, that's kind of the thing that's interesting about these camps. But this isn't as good as watching the kids actually compete against each other. But it's like I said, you never know what a guy like why is Larry Johnson watching this guy swing a medicine ball and hit him? Like what does that correlate to? So it's always interesting to see kind of what these coaches are into. And again, this is LJ just being a mad scientist and constantly evolving his drills, because I don't know if I mean, obviously with the pads on his hands, you can tell he's trying to swat an offensive lineman, but I don't know what he's doing with the medicine ball, but it's something he wants to see. So Nevada, any thoughts on that? And we will dig into we got a super chat.
Well, yeah, no, I just look, it's funny how they do different things with kind of the different kids. I think a lot of them, they just want to see how they respond to coaching. It's not so much that they're going to try to teach them some particular skill or change their life in terms of their get off or whatever it is. But I think they just want to see how receptive are they to coaching, because I think you can tell that. Yeah, I think those are things that you can tell in these private sessions and this time, and with these 5-star kids that have been coddled, and the grown adults are falling all over themselves to bring it. What kind of issues are you going to have in giving them instruction and correcting them and doing that sort of thing? And I think yeah, it's funny how experienced coaches can pick up on little things from these kids, and just in a 20-minute, private session. So I love that stuff. I love it when a kid comes and like I said, expresses that interest because, you know, hey, for Ohio State, Tressel used to say something about how he only wanted people that wanted to be Buckeyes. And I think as fans, I think we all want to, believe that we want kids, um, like I was hearing a thing about the Florida Panthers, the hockey team, and how some of their players like Barkov took less money to be there because they took a hometown discount because they really want to be there in Florida. And I think as an Ohio State fan, we want kids that are willing to take, not they're not chasing top dollar. They're not, just about the money. We know that the money's real. We know the money's, a big part of the equation, but we don't want it to be the total reason they chose to come to Ohio State. And with these kids, I want kids that want to be Buckeyes, that are proud to wear the uniform, that are proud of the institution and proud of the players that came before them. And I think coaches can get a really good idea of what kind of the makeup of these kids are when they come to these camps. So I love everything about that stuff.
Yeah, I do too, and I think that you make a great point about a kid being receptive to some technical stuff you might want to fix. And again, we always have a big disclaimer when the kids show up and we say, this is how we do it at Ohio State. However, your high school coach tells you to do it is how you need to do it when you play for him. But this is how we do it. Don't go, because we're always like, don't go back to your high school coach and say, well, this is what Ohio State does, and this is what I want to do now, because that's the quickest way for us to get kind of in the doghouse. But, again, like there are techniques that need to be adjusted, and there's a lot of stuff that for a lot of these kids, I mean, again, there's a million ways to coach positions like offensive line, defensive line, receiver, different terms, techniques, whatever. And it's really good to see if a kid, how hard it is for him to pick something up. Because if he can pick it up quick, then all of a sudden you're like, man, this kid's going to be a quick study. Like Elfline was like that. Pat Elfline you could teach him something one time, and he knew Jack Mewhort was like that one time, and he was good to go. But I'm excited to see, some of the Matt Patricia stuff, because again, he's a big sled guy. He loves hitting. This is what they do at the beginning of every practice. And this is his New England film, but they hit this sled and they take it to the ground. And it doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a 15-year veteran, like you're forming up on this sled and he wants to see you hit it. He wants to see you drive it. And again, this is something that it wouldn't be surprising to me at all if these kids are doing this at camp, because he wants to see you do, because they got helmets on. I believe that some groups wear shoulder pads, like the offensive and defensive line. There's, Alan Branch, I played against in the 06 game, probably 400 pounds in this video, but he wants to see you strike it, lift it, and see if you can do it. And that's something Justin Fry was big on. He'd have those guys strike the sled to see if they had the hips, the drive, they got it off the ground, if they hit it correctly. Because again, is that the be all end all if you can lift a sled up? Maybe for some coaches, not for me. I always thought the sleds are stupid. But again, it's a good teaching tool. And like, that's why I used to always laugh when people said that we didn't hit the sleds as an offensive line at Ohio State. And I was like, well, sleds don't move at all. And, again, I know that people are like, oh, well, how could you not hit the sled? I'm like, well, the sled is a conditioning tool to me. It's like a treadmill or a bench press or something. Like if I want to go push the sled up and down the field, that's great for developing my lower body and my strike. But once you play like, Quinn Pitcock, or, you play some first round defensive lineman, like he ain't nothing like a sled. He's going to move. He's going to move his hands. They're going to blitz. You don't get like a static guy that just plays straight ahead very often in football. Unless you play like Iowa, who's pretty vanilla. So and honestly, the thing that we used to do in practice, which was way worse than a sled, is we would hit each other. Like we would literally have one-on-one live drive blocking, which is a billion times worse than hitting a sled. I promise you. When you line up nose to nose with a guy and his helmet is a foot away from your head, I used to call it concussion drill, because that's what it was. You come off the ball a foot away and run into each other and see which ram would win. Like two rams running into each other. And it was way harder than a sled. But again, it's always interesting to see what the new coaches want to evaluate when they get into the camp stuff. But I do kind of miss the olden days of camp, because I mean, under Urban, man, camp was a serious work day. It was like we would be out there from 8 to like 4 o'clock, and it was like basically a 2-a-day practice. They'd feed them a sub sandwich at lunch, and they'd sit there for an hour, and we would go into the coaches' offices, and we'd all kind of talk through who we saw, who we liked, who we were evaluating. And the hard part is there were some days it was so thin that there wasn't like a single guy that was worth going after. There wasn't a single guy that was like a radar guy. There might have been like a plan F guy. And that's one of the hard parts about camps is there are days where there aren't any Ohio State guys in your position group. And that's tough because you still got to put them through the paces and do the camp, but there's just not as much to be excited for because you can't control who comes through the door. You can go get after them and tell them, hey, we'd love to see you come to camp and whatever. But, once they're sophomores, juniors, and you're not, really hot on them, they're not going to be coming to camp anymore. All right. I got some super chats. Appreciate you guys for paying it forward as always. Let me get this up. D Sunny, my dude, always bringing it with the best questions. Thanks for the 5. He says, can you tell us some of your big moments from not starting as a sophomore to being on O State's radar? On JV, do coaches know that you're going to T1? Hell no. They didn't think. I mean, I thought I was evolving. I think that something that really hurt me, not hurt me because there's a double-edged sword, is I didn't start playing football until 8th grade. So I wasn't a guy that was some phenom who people saw from a young age and oh my god, this kid's got this trajectory that's incredible. But I had to move to Florida. I lived in Florida. My dad died when I was 12. And at that time I'd never played football. He didn't want me to play football until 8th grade. That was like his master plan because he started playing football when he was, I don't know, like 7 years old, and he had injuries, shoulders and knees, and he had all these. By the time he got to high school, he was kind of spent. Now he still got a Division I scholarship and went to Ohio University to play football, but it wasn't like he felt like the injuries told. Now, granted, back then it was 3-a-days and craziness when he was playing in the 70s, but so I didn't play till 8th grade, so I was raw. I didn't understand the game, zero awareness of what was going on, and I just had to put in the work to get bigger, stronger, faster, and develop. But I didn't know. Kind of what I didn't know. And again, I look back at some of the stuff that I used to think when I was a young kid. I was like, it was crazy that I ever made it where I did because I just was so green with the game. And again, in high school, you've got great coaches, but there's science teachers and special ed teachers, and they're not full-time, football coaches. So they only have so much time to educate you. So you got to kind of educate yourself. And it's a lot easier to do it nowadays with YouTube and videos and personal training everywhere. And a lot of the resources that exist, but I put in the work, and from my 8th grader, I didn't even start as an 8th grader, which is hilarious. Then 9th grade, I started both ways, and then 10th grade, I didn't play varsity, but we had a top. We were like a favorite to win the state championship. We ended up going to the Final Four in Division I as a public school, so that's how good we were. So we had a very, very good team. So it wasn't like I was warming the bench on some mediocre bottom of the league type team. This was a really good team. Went to the Final Four in Division I. Was close to beating Solon. Solon beat us, but but then that junior is when I took a step, and I went to camp. I went to Penn State my sophomore year. Then I went to Ohio State my junior year, and that's when I really got on the map. It's when I went to camp there because I was in great shape. I was really, really twitched up and fast and physical. And I give all the credit to Keith Wakefield, who was my high school coach, because he put us in an incredible weight room environment. It was very physical and very tough. And, most kids weren't in the kind of shape I was in because they didn't get pushed like we did. And it wasn't like a fun, workout chill with a water bottle. It was like Rocky IV, squat and heavy, hang cleans, but when I showed up to camp, it paid off because I was playing defensive end, and again, I didn't know that I was going to end up as an offensive tackle. I played D end at camp, and I just killed everybody. We did one-on-one pass rush, and nobody could stop me. And Jim Haycock loved me and invited me to all the games, and I was all excited. And so I got to go to all the Ohio State games as a junior, and I was on the radar. And then going into my senior year, they wanted me to switch to offensive tackle, which I was fine with, and I'd played tight end my whole life, so I had no idea what I was doing at offensive tackle. But I was a good athlete, and I could stay in front of guys and pass protect. And when you do the one-on-one pass rush and you're playing offensive line, like you just got to shut guys down. And I had really good 5 days of camp, and I camped at Michigan. I camped at Ohio State because Michigan's coaches really wanted me to come up there and work out. And my high school coach is like, you should go to Michigan and Ohio State. So I did, and it was great. And I didn't get offered at camp, which honestly pissed me off, but it was fine. They offered guys that weren't as good as me, which was fine. And then after they want to see my senior tape, which I agreed, and it was good, and I had a good senior year, and I got the offer after my senior year. So I was on tilt for the whole season because I was waiting for my offer and wasn't sure if I was going to get it. And then when they finally pulled the trigger, it was a wrap because I hated recruiting. I didn't want to go anywhere. I committed. So nobody saw it coming except me. And that's like the thing is like, I always tell these kids, I'm like, look, when you're that kid and you're that young dude, the only guy that has to believe in you is you. Because it doesn't matter if your mom likes you or your girlfriend or whatever. It's like you're the guy that has to go do it. And you got to go put in the work and the time. And a lot of the stuff that you do isn't glamorous. It's toil, lifting and being sore and going to camps and all the stuff that you have to do to be good and potentially be a Division I guy or to be an Ohio State guy. It's a lot of work. So but I was proud of it. But then then the next step of it is like, look, when you get that offer and you show up, like it's not a coronation. Like you're there, you got to go put in work now. You got to go prove that you earned that offer because that Ohio State offer, it's a double-edged sword, man. Because there's kids from Massillon that show up there and they're not good enough to play, and they're just known as busts for the rest of their life. And that's and there's a lot of kids that are like that in Ohio. And that was something that drove kids like Elfline. I talked to them, was like, you don't want to be the guy that's from Pickerington that shows up to Ohio State and then you're not good enough to play. Because then you'll hear about that the rest of your life too. So you got to put in the work. And again, you need some breaks, you need some luck. Just kind of is what it is. Because some guys that get shelved because of injuries, or they might have a great player in front of them, but it all kind of has to break the right way. Nevada, you have any thoughts to add to that? Because it's always interesting, and that's why I read for kids like Jake Cook and Elfline and these camp offer kids, because Jake Cook, who was someone that nobody was excited when he committed, is already running with our second team as a high school senior in spring practice. So his trajectory is exceptionally high. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, just a couple of observations. One, if I recall correctly, you were the only offensive lineman in that epic 2003 class. I think that was kind of an interesting choice that they made. Of all the linemen in the entire country, the only one they offered was Kirk Barton. So that was interesting. Two, Bigfoot Holmes, Lewis Holmes, the famous Bigfoot sighting. He was part of that '03 class too, wasn't he? Like 'cause whenever they talk about Lewis Holmes, he
Oh
was
my
there.
God.
You actually had the experience to the Bigfoot. And then my third observation is, boy, that class really sucked. That was just a really bad recruiting. But it had some top end. I mean, you had what, Tony Gonzalez, you had Dante Whitner, you had so you had there's some top end, some All American type of players there. But man, the rest of that class was really doodly doo.
Did you know Lewis Holmes died?
What? Really? He died?
38 years old. Yeah.
Did not know that. That's sad. I
Yeah.
did not know that. Wow.
38 Lewis Bigfoot Holmes. Yeah.
Mm,
He was from
that
he was from Dillard High School. I swear that's where Gamble went. That was like the connection. I
Interesting.
and I played against him in the NFL preseason my rookie year. I was
Oh
like, oh my
wow,
God,
wow.
it's Bigfoot. He played for the 49ers. He's an undrafted free agent. I was like, oh my God, it's Bigfoot Holmes. Just like from the magazine, just from Ohio Future Stars fame.
Wow. Well,
Do you feel old now?
well, I feel
Is
old all the
is
time, but
every day I get out of bed, I feel a little old.
every day I get out of bed, I feel old.
Oh,
Exactly. Yeah, but I'm definitely old because I can remember the moment you recruit, because you know as a guy who's a recruit, Nick, you're kind of going, hey, is Ohio State going to add an offensive lineman in this class? And then they add this tight end out of Massillon Perry. It's like, who's this tight end guy? Out of it
Lewis
turned out to
Holmes.
turned out to be Barton. Barton wins
Well,
the
I'll never. And again, when you're a young kid and you're on the, you read the message boards and stuff because you're on it, and you're like, well, what are people saying about me? Because what do they know that I don't know? And like, there was this big fat kid named Kenyon Buford, and he
Yep, from Georgia,
committed.
from Georgia or something like that.
He was from like Tennessee or something. He was from
Okay,
Tennessee.
okay.
And he was like 370 pounds and looked like a big fat blob of cookie dough. And I was like, who the hell's this kid? And I called Jim Bowman. I was like, did we take a commitment from a kid named Kenyon Buford? And he's like, who? He's like, we're talking to him a little bit, but we're not, we haven't accepted any commitment. We haven't even offered him. But like, it was on like Bucknuts or whatever the message board was back then. It was like Buford is a Buckeye with like 7 exclamation points after it. And I was like, who is this? And again, back in the day, and this was kind of the luxury of being, in recruiting circa 2003, is there were no videos at all of anyone. And so there might be like some still photo from some Nike camp or some Rivals camp or something. So that's all you have to go on. And for a lot of these kids, there weren't even photos. So it's like they showed a photo of this kid, and I was like, sometimes I can look at a kid and I'm like, there's just no way that guy can play. There's no way that kid's going to be good. There's just no chance. And sure as can be, like, they're like, I mean, because like when I committed, it was like a wet fart. And then when this kid commits, it's like 7 exclamation points. And like, you would have thought we signed Corey Stringer, and we signed some big fat kid who ended up going to Middle Tennessee State, never played. And it was just like, it was like one of those things. It's like, oh, I don't remember that one for sure. But that's the thing it's so interesting about recruiting back then, is that there just wasn't, you had no intel. Like, it was like you're in like Siberia. Like you didn't know what a kid looked like, how big guys really were, because there'd be these heights and weights that were just kind of all over the map. And, Matt Mazel's the best offensive lineman in Ohio. And then he shows up to camp and he's the fat turd, and he 5'9", 40, slow as mud, and I was like, these guys at Ohio Future Stars seriously rated him as the best offensive lineman in Ohio, and he's just hot trash, and again, like he literally ran a 5'9", 40. I ran like a 4'8", fickle time to me, and I was like, and I just torched him, and I was like, that guy's the number one guy in the state of Ohio, and again, scouting was different. There wasn't huddle, there wasn't film. So I don't know if it was like he was some guy's uncle that wrote for the magazine or what it was, but I was just like, there were so many guys that sucked that were rated high. And that's like the amazing thing about campus. It's kind of like unearthing a gem. Like, is this guy real? Because like Dave Patterson was there. Dave Patterson was real as real could be. Dante Whitner was real. Like, you saw guys that were real. Brady Quinn. And then you saw a lot of guys that I was like, I don't know. I was like, that guy's grandpa must own the magazine or something if he's rated that high, because he's trash. But that was like the cool thing about going to the camps back then, is that you had no intel on these kids. There was no film, there's no YouTube. And most of us had never seen each other or met each other. Maybe went to like a junior day or something, but that was it. Now it's like, if I'm getting ready for one of these camps, man, I'm watching film of every single guy. Like if I'm Jake Cook or one of these guys, I'm getting film on every single D lineman that's going to be there and just studying the crap out of it, learning all of his moves, getting ready to go. And then, once you get to the camp, then it's just lock them up. But you could have like some intel on what's going on. So yeah, it was, that was the funnest part about camp, is like when you show up and you don't know if any of these guys are real. And then you figure out that most of them aren't, and you're better than most of them. And then you ascend and they descend. So I don't know. Like, I kind of miss those days, because it was fun figuring out that, God, I was like, this guy has all these offers. And I was like, who's offering these guys? And I'm thinking about one of my guys that ended up being teammates with at Ohio State who wasn't real good. And he's a friend of mine still, but I was just like, there's no way that you should have this offer list. You should have Kent State and Walsh, and that's about it. All right. D Sunny, thanks for the 5. Appreciate you, my dude, for the second one. All right, Nevada, got another one. Here we go. All right. Nevada, who was the youngest kid you have ever saw that you'd have taken all bets on him making it to the NFL? That's a great question. Nevada, have you seen a young phenom out in Southern California or elsewhere that you were like, that kid's going to make it?
Well, I mean, the kid that I would have bet anything on that I saw at a really young age was Kenyon Rambo. I mean, Kenyon Rambo was a guy that was just, tore up youth football. Um, went to Long Beach Poly, and if you know anything about the history of Long Beach Poly in Southern California, I mean, they've put out, you know, 50 NFL players. I mean, it's a ridiculous public school that just cranks out the players. You know, it's not modern day or any of these parochial schools where they're recruiting. This is just kids from the area, and just great programs. And he was by far the best wide receiver that had ever come through that school. And when he came to Ohio State, I could not have been more excited. I mean, I think he was one of the first big out of state, or and certainly out of Southern California wide receivers coming to Ohio State. And um, I just thought he would do all sorts of amazing things. And he had his moments, and I think he had a cup of coffee in the NFL, literally a cup of coffee. But yeah, Kenyon Rambo was a guy that I think his senior year in high school he had like 26 touchdown receptions, which who I mean at that level of football, that's just a crazy level of production, especially back then. I mean, passing the quarterbacks weren't as prolific as they are now, so he was a man playing against boys. So I'd have to say Kenyon Rambo was the best I've ever seen at that age.
Yeah, I mean, Pauly, they had a humongous class. They might have been a year older than me, maybe. Like they had Mercedes Lewis, they had Herschel Dennis, they had Winston Justice. They all went to SC except for Mercedes Lewis. For some reason, Mercedes Lewis went to UCLA, but like the other four guys, like Winston Justice was like the number one player in the country or close to it, and Tom Lemon called him the Orlando Pace of the West, and obviously that didn't materialize. But he was a guy that, he was a big, athletic dude, and I think he was a second round pick in the draft, but he never really materialized in the league. Um, but yeah, I remember Pauly. They had like this photo shoot on the cover of the one magazine where it was five guys from Pauly that were all in like the top 20 or something crazy, and they were good. But yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if I have one super early that was that good that materialized. I remember I had Cam Hayward's little brother on my like seventh grade team. For we had this we do this Buckeye ball thing where it's like the gym class thing that you always do. Um, but he was a guy that he's playing for the Steelers now. I don't know if I would have projected he was going to be like a big time NFL guy. Just trying to think of any other younger guys. I knew Dante would be, but I mean he was senior in high school, so it wasn't like he was some young phenom ish type kid. But it'll be interesting with some of these SFE kids because some of these kids I've been seeing since they're in eighth and ninth grade, and I've been hearing about them, and like is Eric McFarland ended up being a superstar in the NFL because he's already the best player at IMG and he's going to be a sophomore, which is crazy. Um, so I don't know. I mean, from my area, I mean, we had Doss and we had Jamar Martin and some guys that went to the league for a little bit, that were really really good players, but I just don't know if there was someone super young that I knew would be a star in the league that I was around. I can't. I don't think I
Let,
can
let me.
think of
th- I,
anybody.
I'll throw out
Good.
another name. A kid that I coached when he was 7 years old was my quarterback in my flag football league in Manhattan Beach, and that was a kid named Josh Rosen, the Rosen one. And I thought Josh was. I mean, Josh went to UCLA and was unbelievable. Was a top 10 pick in the draft or 12 or whatever it was, and but really weird kid, really different kind of kid. But I would have bet any. I mean, that was a kid that was. I mean, even at that age, he was just different. I mean, a kid that you can identify at 7 years old is going to be a first round draft pick in the NFL, and he ends up being a first round draft pick in the NFL. That tells you how good he was at 7 years old. He was just
Yeah.
he was the only kid who could throw a spiral at that age, and every other kid's like couldn't even grip the ball, and he's ripping it like 40 yards down the field and stuff. So yeah, he tore up Manhattan Beach youth football for a while for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and he's a kid that he got drafted. I'll never forget. He got drafted by the Cardinals, and it was just like, they had a defensive head coach, and they had terrible infrastructure, and he never really had a shot. Like again, like when you're a rookie quarterback, man, you really get if you go somewhere with some infrastructure around you, at least you have a chance. It's like if you see Shador play for the Browns this year, and they've got Dewan, and they've got Batonio, and they've got Wyatt Tell, they've got, pretty good offensive line, really good running back with Quinshawn being the starter, and some of the pieces around him. At least he might have a shot. But man, some of these guys, they go to positions, and it's terrible. And it's like you look at like the Washington Commanders, wherever they are now, the Redskins, with Jane Daniels, like, I mean, they didn't have great guys around them, but Terry McLaurin's a Pro Bowl receiver, and they just traded for Laramie Tunsil, and they took a first round tackle. The kid Connerly, the kid from Oregon, is going to play their right tackle, so they have 2 first round tackles protecting them. And I don't know, man. It's like when you've got like some guys around you, it makes your life a lot easier. They traded for Deebo Samuel, but if you go to some just dumpster fire, terrible organization, I just think it's so hard to get out of that. It's like it was what like the Oakland Raiders were for years and years under Al Davis. Like no matter who they drafted or who they signed to play quarterback, it was always a dumpster fire. Like Jamarcus Russell obviously was a tremendous bust, but I mean they traded 2 first round picks for Carson Palmer, and Carson Palmer, who still had some gas left in the tank, was atrocious. And then all of a sudden he goes to Arizona, and he's good, because again, Arizona had Bruce Arians. They had a quarterback guy. They had Larry Fitzgerald. They had some good skill around him. Like Josh didn't have that. So again, I'm not going to say it wasn't a bust or whatever, because again, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care. But some of these guys, they get drafted into situations where they have literally no chance. Like Mac Jones going to the Patriots, no chance. So, all right, Nevada, we have crushed an hour tonight. Let's wrap this thing up. Any final thoughts as we head off into McDavid and the NBA tonight?
No, just if you like this podcast, you want to support the podcast, consider becoming a member at BuckeyeScoop.com. The message board is unbelievable source of information on everything under the sun, including investing, college football, Ohio State recruiting, and it's where we hang out the other 23 hours a day if we're not here on the podcast. So, like I said, if you like the podcast, you want to become the complete knowledgeable Ohio State fan, consider joining us at BuckeyeScoop.com and become a premium member, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's a great Father's Day gift, because I know a lot of you guys don't know what to get the men that you're going to buy a Father's Day gift for. But it's a great gift, and it's something that you can use year round. It's a great companion for Ohio State football. It's like throwing a supercharger on your car. It's like, there's certain things in life that once you do it, it's you're like, man, how did I ever live without it? And Buckeye Scoop's one of those things. We have very high retention rate, and we're very proud of that, because it's a nice, clean board, family friendly, and a lot of great people that are like really, really exceptional, well-to-do folks. I mean, you'd be stunned who's on this board behind these screen names, but it's some of the biggest hitters that are around Columbus, Ohio, Ohio State fans around the world, and some of the people at the very top of the food chain within Ohio State football. So, but with that being said, thank you so much for being a part of the show. If you guys enjoy our content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, also click that little alert bell. Again, I appreciate you guys for being on here each and every night. Again, I love the chat. I love that you guys are getting active in it. It's always fun to see the friendships that form in this chat. And I can't wait to get our next meetup designed. I know you guys have been asking me about it, so we'll figure that out rather quickly. Your gear, for those of you guys that ordered gear, they ordered the blank items this week, and they're going to get those printed up and shipped. So within 1 to 2 weeks, you guys will have all of your gear. I appreciate it. It was the biggest drop we've ever had by far. So thank you. Again, I hope to see you guys out there repping Buckeye Scoop, because, I wear it every day. My Buckeye Scoop on every day. And everybody that knows me knows I wear Buckeye Scoop every day. So I am excited to see you guys rock your gear, and send me some photos. I want to see where you guys are rocking it at, especially if you guys are out on vacation, out and about. I just love seeing it everywhere that you guys go. So with that being said, thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. And thank you, Scoop family. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 7:10. I can't wait. And man, it is starting to crank up, man. We got visits, we got camps. We're going to be in a training camp soon. Oh boy, what a great time to be an Ohio State football fan. So you guys have a great rest of your night. Go Bucks.